Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that arrived in Riku box number 2. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaksanaho, my Finnish beer mule living in Oulu in the northwest of Finland, and it's thanks to him that you guys get to enjoy a steady stream of Finnish reviews here on the channel. A lovely guy, very knowledgeable about his beer, and he seems to have his own beer mule network set up within Finland that he uses to get a hold of various different things, and then he in turn sends it on over to me here in Sweden, which is great, and it means that you guys can enjoy some Finnish beer reviews. I've been very impressed with the quality of Finnish stuff that I've had so far, and Riku and I will continue this for the years to come. So you'll see many more Finnish reviews over the next little while. But Riku, a massive thank you to you once again for making this and all the other Finnish reviews possible here on the channel. And I hope that you guys watching are enjoying these as well. I certainly enjoy reviewing the Finnish beers for you. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. This could well be my most reviewed Finnish brewery these days, come to think of it. But they do some awesome beers, and the one that we're going to try today is quite a bit different from the ones that we've had from them before. So yeah, depending on when you're watching this review, these guys are based in Tuusula or Viki in the Helsinki area, and we're going to go back to Coolhead Brew for this one. So this particular beer is called Black Velvet. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout, my first dark beer from Coolhead Brew actually. So yeah, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. I've had New England IPAs from these guys, I've had quite a few different sour beers actually, but as I say, this is my first Imperial Stout and my first dark beer generally from them as well. So yeah, I have to say, very curious to see how this one turns out. This is supposed to be a very nice beer, and knowing Coolhead, I'm sure it will live up to that kind of accolade if you like. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Coolhead Brew before, and we will no doubt add more to that list after the next Riku box. Just keep your eyes peeled for that. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Finnish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to gradually, of course, as I work my way through the Riku beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Coolhead Brew once again then. So Coolhead Brew, as I've said to you already, are based in Tuusula or Viki, depending on when you're watching this video, but Tuusula is about 30 kilometers to the north of Helsinki, and this is where the company was founded. But they were founded back in 2014 by Kleber Gonçalves, who is originally from Brazil. So Kleber worked in the technology sector for a number of years, and this took him to work in England and then to Finland, where he still is today. But he started planning his brewery in about 2013, and then he officially established the company in 2014. They kind of worked around getting their equipment and developing recipes over the next few years, and then production was set up properly in February of 2016, and they've just been gradually building up the capacity of the brewery ever since. But today they employ 8 people, and they're brewing around 180,000 litres of beer per year. That is about to change though. In early 2021, they announced that they were going to move to a new premises in Viki, which is in eastern Helsinki, and this place that they have is a former tropical garden, and it's going to be opened to the public in stages as a brewery with a tap room and a restaurant. So we'll need to keep an eye on that over the next little while. But if you are interested to see what it looks like, you can go to the Coolhead Brew YouTube channel and you'll get a video of Kleber walking around in this place and showing you around, which is pretty cool. But these guys brew a lot of different fruit beers, sour beers, IPAs, and they've also in more recent times been doing quite a bit of barrel aging as well. So from what Riku tells me, their Imperial Stouts and their barrel aging program is very good. So hopefully we can try a few more beers from that over the next little while actually. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 220 different kinds of beer, so they are a pretty damn prolific brewery. And as I say, if you're interested in big fruity juicy sours, New England hazy IPAs and Imperial Stouts and and things, this is a brewery that you definitely want to check out. And I think it's fair to say as well that these guys are potentially one of the most recognisable Finnish craft beer names these days. So probably these guys and Salama are the two breweries that are really starting to get out there a little bit at the moment. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Coolhead Brew for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers I've done. Got a little bit of dryness in the throat there, must be needing the beer. But yeah, let's take a little quick look at the artwork of this one then before we crack it open. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is a wee bit different to what we've had from Coolhead Brew before. You can see it's a little bit more kind of chic, could we say? I don't know, Peter the Clueless Drinker would be turning at me saying things like this. I'm the most artistically illiterate person that you'll ever find. I'm more into music, me, I would say. But yeah, as you can see, black velvet, beautifully presented. This one, it tells you a little bit on the back about the beer. So it says this is an Imperial Stout brewed with over 10 different malts, dark Muscovado sugar and Madagascar vanilla beans. So that sounds pretty damn good actually. But Riku thought this was one that I would really enjoy. I remember him asking me about this on Facebook actually if I wanted one of these, and I have to say I am very, very glad that I did. But there you can see the Coolhead Brew. This is supposed to symbolise Clever's hair, because he has very, very fluffy hair, of course, but I think his hair is actually long now. I think he's got dreadlocks now, if I remember rightly, but back in the day his hair was, you know, kind of afro like, I guess you could say. But yeah, 330ml can. This one, I think, I honestly forget the price of this, but this one was either, I think this one was maybe about €7, €7.50. Let's say €7.50. So yeah, about 75 Swedish kroner for those of you watching here. At €7.50 works out at about, you know, £6 maybe, £6, £6.50 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of 8 or 9 American dollars for those of you watching over there. But yeah, 10% Imperial Stout. This one, 10 different malts in the malt base, Muscovado sugar and Madagascar vanilla beans. So yeah, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. Very nice looking beer, this one, from the presentation. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the taste. And then my first Imperial Stout from Coolhead Brew. Let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. So yeah, this should be nice. I always love it when you get to try new styles from breweries that you know fairly well. I always think this is interesting to see when they have a go at something a bit different, although, you know, prior to me trying this particular beer, they do have a little bit of history with Imperial Stouts, of course. But yeah, should be quite nice. So let me just line up the can again so that my OCD is happy, and there we are. So as you can see with this beer, it's poured, before the head disappears, we should look at that actually. So you can see this beer's poured with a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say medium beige head, medium tan head maybe. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall it looks very nice, and the head incidentally has faded away to just be a very thin kind of wispy layer with a nice foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But in terms of colour, this beer, when you shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to it. But yeah, for an Imperial Stout, that is not surprising. This one is pretty much black as night otherwise. I would describe this as a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. It looks very, very nice, but nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I like how that one goes about its business. So yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. The only other thing we can say about this beer potentially is that it looks extremely calm in terms of carbonation. There's not too much visible in this one at all actually. So yeah, and I think just shining the light through it, it actually does have quite a little bit of light coming through it, to be honest. So maybe if the beer were a little bit lighter it would be clear. I'm not sure. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then and just see how we get on. From the whiffs I've had already, this is an absolutely beautiful smelling beer. So let's look at it a little bit more closely. That's ridiculous. That's a beautiful, beautiful smelling beer. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's absolutely lovely, that. yeah, I'm just going to say straight away, thumbs up to Coolhead for the aroma with this one. This has got so much going on in it. It actually, the first thing that jumps out of my head with this beer actually on the first impression is a little bit of soy sauce. It's almost got a little bit of that in there. But yeah, when you've got 10 different malts in it, I'm not surprised you're getting that level of complexity out of it. So it's one of these cases of where do you even start with this? But yeah, so the backbone of this beer then, how do we even break this down? This one's just got one of these really strong, you know, highly caramelized, brown sugary, chocolatey notes to it. It smells just, you know, absolutely, it just smells absolutely beautiful. Yeah, just craziness coming out of this beer. So yeah, remember, if it's got this level of kind of treacle molasses type character to it, that kind of indicates that this is a very long boil stout. Actually, remember, when it comes to your wort boil, the wort boil is the thing that caramelizes a lot of the sugars in the malt base. And you know, the longer you caramelize the beer, the more the sugars, or the longer that you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelize, and thus you also get a darker color of beer as well. So yeah, this one is pretty much black as night, apart from a little bit of light coming through it. But yeah, let's try and break down this aroma for you a little bit more and see where we're at. So yeah, the backbone of this beer is just, the malty backbone in this beer is just absolutely beautiful. So you can smell a little tiny touch of a kind of roasty, toasty note out of this one, a wee bit of a kind of smooth brown bread as well, but there's a lot of chocolate in there. You smell that kind of high cocoa chocolate, you know, an 80-90% cocoa chocolate. It's a little bit dry as well, as if it's a little bit of a kind of chocolate powder, but at the same time you get a more kind of silky chocolatey element to it as well, which I think goes together really, really nicely. But it's straight, as I say, I get just a little element of soy sauce out of this beer. It's so unusual actually. But yeah, as I say, big high cocoa chocolates. Yeah, big high cocoa chocolates. Some how do you say? Big high cocoa chocolates. Some powdery elementy chocolates there. You do get a little bit of milky chocolate out of this one a little bit later on as well. But a lot of the complexity that you get out of this beer, is more to do with that brown sugar. So you can definitely pick out a highly kind of treacly molasses kind of note to this one. You get a lot of that in this beer, and it feels very, very thick. There is an element of sweeter caramel in there, a little bit of a toasty, there is a little bit of a more kind of toasty brown sugary element in there as well, like a little bit of a more kind of toasty caramel. But yeah, very, very thick, highly caramelized brown sugary elements coming out of this one. So yeah, the aroma coming out of this beer is just absolutely beautiful. And as I say, I just get an element of soy sauce out of this. It's so unusual. There's maybe a wee teeny hint of a licorice in there as well. But yes, it's really interesting just how all of that kind of pieces together in this beer. I would not have expected that kind of soy sauce element from it at all. It takes a little while, I think, for the vanilla to come out of this one. I mean, you can smell a few sort of woody and nutty undertones in there, but the vanilla that you get out of this one really mixes in with the kind of chocolatey elements for me, and that comes out a little bit further forward on the nose. So when the beer starts to smell a little bit more oily and sweet, that's when you get the kind of vanilla elements out of this one. And I do really like how that goes together in this beer. Absolutely. And the malty base on this one is just awesome. I'm really looking forward to tasting this. I almost can't resist it. But yeah, let's take a quick look at the hoppy side of the beer then. The malty side of things is just crazy, absolutely crazy. Very, very thick, chocolatey and brown sugary elements out of it. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, you do get a nice little bit of you get a nice little touch of earthiness to it. For me, I can still pick out a little bit of the grassy and kind of floral element to the beer. Remember, the longer that you kind of age this beer, if you like, the more the hoppy characters are going to drop out of it. But yeah, you still get a little bit of that kind of pungency, if you like, from the green component of this one. A little bit of a floral aromaticity, a bit of a grassy zestiness in there. But yeah, it certainly does work. I would say that's where the green component of the hops really lay there. It does actually still have a little bit of pungency to it. But let's focus on the fruity part of the beer then. So for me, The fruity notes in this one are actually quite sharp. So for me, good little bit of a kind of raisiny, good little bit of a raisiny sharpness out of this one. You do get quite a bit of a juicy plum in there and a few dried fruits, you know, like a pruny, a sort of pruny element to this one too. But the more that you smell of it, you start to get a wee element of a kind of chocolate brownie vibe to the beer as well. But then there's also quite a bit of a sharp blackberry one for me. So a lot of raisin, a lot of kind of blackberry in this one, very sharp dark fruits in this beer for me, but a little bit of a kind of chocolate brownie in there, definitely some plum and prune, and yeah, I think that kind of summarises the fruity side of this beer as well. I think we'll get more complexity out of that when we actually taste it though, but yeah, the overall aroma of this beer is just beautiful actually, so I have to say, very excited to try it. Let's get stuck into this beer now then and just see how we get on. So yeah, this one is the Black Velvet, a 10% Imperial Stout, with 10 different malts, Muscovado sugar, and Madagascar vanilla beans from Coolhead Brew in Viki, or this one was brewed actually in Tuusula still, so this one was still brewed in Tuusula, but these guys are from the Helsinki area over in Finland. Big thank you to Riku once again for this beer, but let's get cracking with this one. Slanje, skål, kipis. There we go. Yeah, that thing is just beautiful. First impression, very, very slick, very smooth stout, this one. Kind of lives up to its name, you know, Black Velvet. You can see why they would call it that. And it's got a little bit of everything, you know, you get a wee bit of roasty toastiness out of it, you get a bit of bitterness from the chocolate and everything, and then you get the sweet brown sugars. That's a beautiful beer. Massive thumbs up to Coolhead. I think I'll need to ask Riku to pick me up a few more of things from the darker end of the spectrum from Coolhead, but that is very, very nice. So thumbs up to Coolhead for this beer. Another solid Imperial, another solid beer. I was going to say another solid Imperial Stout. How would I know? This is the first one. You know, wake up brain. There you go. I tell you something, the Finns do some very, very good high alcohol beers. The high alcohol stuff, the big boys that I've had from Finland so far have been very, very impressive. But yeah, I don't, you know, where do we even start with this beer then? Where do we start with this one? Straight away across the middle of your palate then, you can feel that roasty, toasty black malt backbone to this one. I don't think it is pure black malt though. I think it could be a little bit of, I think there might be a blend of Carafa and maybe Special B forming the backbone in this beer. There's something a little bit distinctive about it. It actually reminds me of some of the ones I've had from Nerd Brewing actually, so yeah. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is quite nice. I do like that. I always feel with these Imperial Stouts that it's nice to have, I think, I don't like the ones that are just, you know, sweet all the way through. I think you have got to have a little bit of a roasty toasty. I think you have got to have a roasty toasty element to these Imperial Stouts. Just to kind of show you, yeah, this is an Imperial Stout. So yeah, like I say, with this beer you've got that roasty toasty black malty note there, a bit of a well-fired bread crust that blankets the middle of your tongue. Sitting on top of that you've got a nice little layer of a very kind of grainy brown bready character in there, that sort of wholemeal brown bread that's sitting there. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then move diagonally back, you'll start to get a few kind of woody elements out of it, particularly underneath the front half of that middle third of your tongue there. You get a few woody elements in there, and if you go to the dead centre of your palate and just follow the line of your tongue forward, you'll also get a little bit of a kind of nutty undertone to the beer. But these are the really kind of these are the backbones of the beer actually. The thing about this one is it doesn't come across as overly thick, and we'll come to the mouthfeel later of course, but this is not an overly thick beer. It's not as thick as the Danish and Swedish and Norwegian stouts that you're going to come across, but it's absolutely packed with flavour. It's absolutely packed with flavour, this one. So yeah, kind of shows you don't need to be massively thick you don't need to have a massively thick mouthfeel to pack an absolute an absolute beastly amount of flavour in this beer. This beer certainly packs a punch, but that's lovely. This is a lovely, lovely stout, this. And the more you drink of it, the more it kind of sweetens up as well. For me, it's almost like the chocolate comes out a little bit more in the aftertaste, whereas the brown sugar kind of takes the lead, which is interesting. But yeah, sitting on top of that bready layer that I was talking about, if you go towards the back half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel the sort of darker, more bitter chocolatey elements sitting there, you know, the 80, the 90% cocoa chocolates there. You can feel that, and they're almost a little bit powdery. And again, they're sort of supported by that roasty black malty quality sitting underneath. But as you move further forward, you can feel the chocolate just gradually mellows out a little bit, and then as you move into the front half of that middle third of your tongue, you start to get, you know, the sort of more milky chocolate elements out of it. You start to get the 40-50% cocoa chocolate, and then on the front half as well, you get the vanilla coming out of this one, and the vanilla's nice and big and oily actually, but and that becomes more prominent the further you go into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, it's a very layered beer, this one, and I think it works again very, very well. But the brown sugars in this, the Muscovado sugar, it's really nice. It's quite funny with this beer, because in the middle of your palate you almost get a little bit of a very kind of sharp and sweet red fruity character, which is quite unusual, but I think that's coming from the chocolatey elements of this beer, really. I mean, if there's 10 different malts in there, it'll be from one of these. I'd love to see what the malt bill in this beer actually was, to be honest with you, because I think I could guess a couple of them. But yeah, it's just as I say, it's just a beautiful beer. This is potentially one of the most kind of complex stouts I've reviewed in quite a wee while. But yeah, we've covered the chocolatey layer of the beer then. So let's look at the brown sugars. So almost on top of those chocolate elements, it almost feels as if the kind of Muscovado sugar, that sort of bright Muscovado sugar is just kind of sitting in the layer on top of that. But then on top of that kind of nice, slightly that very nice and sweet and slightly toasty Muscovado sugar, that's when you get the big treacly molasses elements, where the sugar is being, you know, extracted from the malt rather than coming from the adjunct, if you like. So yeah, in the very dead centre of your palate, you get this sort of big circle, if you like, and in the very dead centre of that, that's where you get the really highly caramelised treacle molasses type flavours out of this one. As you progressively go further and further out from that, you start to get the sweeter caramelly elements, and you start to get a little bit of a more kind of toasty, brown sugary element out of the beer, particularly as you go further and further out towards the kind of the edge of the palate there, which I think is really, really nice as well. So yeah, I do love how this one goes about its business. It is very, very nice. The brown sugars in this beer are lovely, and as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste, the beer, it's kind of interesting, because at the back of the palate it becomes more roasty and toasty, whereas in the front of the palate it gets a little bit sweeter. This beer's got a lovely just balance to it, and it gives you a bit of everything that you would want from an Imperial stout. So it's hard. This beer I don't think is a pastry stout. I don't think it is. I think it is just I think it's basically a bit of a bit of everything stout, I would say. But yeah, this is lovely. So massive plaudits to Coolhead Brew for this one. This is spot on. So yeah, let's focus on the back third of your palate, because I think we've kind of covered the middle third of the palate, where the biggest level of complexity is. But yeah, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of an almost kind of cakey, Christmas puddingy type build up on this one, and a wee bit of a toasty, black malty type thing. Then on the back third of your palate, you can really feel that toasty, well-fired bread crusty element again, and maybe a wee bit of the brown bread as well. So sitting on top of that back third of your layer, you get the more yeasty elements to the beer. So as you start at the back of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. You get those more airy yeasty notes in there. But then as you move further forward, it condenses down, and then in the middle third of your palate, everything is quite kind of slick and condensed and squashed together in a sense. But that doesn't take away anything from the complexity at all in this beer. The malty and yeasty components in this beer are very, very nice. But yeah, let's go on to the green side of the hops then. Back corners of the palate, there's a good little bit of earthiness. This one, it's not overly bitter. Yeah, it's not overly bitter, but yeah, you do get a little bit of a better earthy bite kind of coming out of this one. But as you move further forward, there's a little bit of a kind of smoother herbally quality to this one. Then as you move towards the kind of front corners of your palate, there's a lovely kind of floral aromatic note coming out of this one. You get a big floral aromaticity coming out of this beer, and as I say, the longer you keep this beer, the more that will drop out of it. But for me, at this point in time, it's still present there. And then round the front curve of the glass, you've got the front curve of your palate. You've got a lovely little bit of a lighter kind of grassy element to this one, a little bit of a kind of zestiness almost there. So yeah, the green component for me in this beer is quite active, but as I say, the longer that you keep this one, the more that's going to drop out. But as I say, I don't know, one thing I would always be concerned a little bit about in cans is I don't know how they keep the light out very well, but with cans, can they last being cellared as long as other things? That's an interesting point for sure. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, that's the green component of your beer. Let's focus on that front third of your palate then. So again, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of cakey build up there. Again, a toasty, well-fired and kind of black malty thing in there too. But the base of that front third of your palate is the sort of smooth, it's got a little bit of that kind of brown bready kind of element to it as well, and just a wee bit of the bread crusty, the well-fired bread crusty notes sitting underneath. Then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, I really like how that goes together. But yeah, the fruity, the sort of fruity, juicy elements out of this beer as well are just lovely. Not quite as sharp as I thought they were going to be on the basis of the aroma, but they come out very nicely. So yeah, as I say, you've got that toasty, like almost charred chocolate brownie, Christmas puddingy type thing at the back of the palate. So sitting just on top of that, you get a little bit of a sharp raisin in there. Then you start to get the more juicy kind of plummy elements to the beer. And as you move further forward, the plummy, the sort of oiliness of the plum just kind of spreads forward a wee bit. You get a little touch of a figgy element to it. Then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a blackcurranty element. But I do stress that the front third of your palate in this beer, the baseline, is actually quite dry. You do get quite a bit of dryness out of that the further you go into the aftertaste. So let's just take a little bit more of it in with the fruits. So yeah, it's actually a very juicy thing. You'll find when you take this beer in, it's a very juicy sort of blackberry-ish, raisiny mix that you get on the fruit, and then it just gradually dries out. So yeah, to go through it quickly, raisins on top at the back, juicy plums, then as you move further forward, a little bit of a figgy kind of blackcurranty mix, and then on the front half of that front third of your tongue, that's where you get the more kind of how do we say? That's where you get the more sort of juicier blackberry-ish type notes out of this one. So I like how that. I do like how that goes together in this beer. The fruity side of it works very, very nicely. But let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So as I've said to you, this is definitely not the thickest of Imperial stouts that you're going to come across. It actually has a very clean and quite bright mouthfeel to it actually. So I would say that this beer is the kind of, it's sort of top end to mid bodied, bottom end to full bodied. No, let's go with bottom end to full bodied for me. As I say, it's not the thickest of Imperial stouts you're going to come across, but that doesn't do it. That is not in any way detrimental to the beer. It really suits the mouthfeel that it has. So yeah, bottom end to full bodied for me. The carbonation is very smooth. It's got a real slickness to it, and again, you have a real sort of clean quality to this mouthfeel. It feels really sort of nice and clean. The quality of the Nordic water, I guess we could say, it really feels like that. But yeah, a very, very complex beer in its maltiness. So the malt base for me, it's got a really roasty, toasty, kind of bitter backbone to it, but it's got a lot of kind of smooth sweetness that comes out from the brown sugars particularly, and then the chocolate also adds a little bit to the bitterness too. So you've got a really nice balance in the malt base here between sweetness and sort of bitterness and things, and I think that really leads to a lot of complexity in this beer. The adjuncts give the beer a lot of brightness as well, actually, on the malty side of things. But in terms of bitterness, what would we say? I think this maybe has to be about a 50 or 60 IBU beer. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you. Remember, this is my weakest point of beer reviewing, but it does have a fair little bit of bitterness to it. And then, as I say, the fruitiness in this beer, it's got a lovely, just slightly oily, very juicy quality to it, this one. But yeah, this is another beautiful, beautiful beer from Coolhead Brew, and it certainly makes me very curious to try a few more Imperial stouts from these guys. So, you know, well done to Coolhead Brew. This is one of my favourite stouts I think I've had over the last little while. I really, really like this one. You know, the one that we had from Hisi as well recently, the Isla Barrel Aged one. I forget the name of that now because it was a Finnish word, but that Isla Barrel Aged stout was great, and it just kind of goes to show you the Finns know what they're doing with craft beer generally, but particularly I think when it comes to the high alcohol big boys. They've got some really beautiful examples of those beers over there. So yeah, definitely take a little bit of time and try some Finnish beer if you get the chance. But I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Black Velvet, a 10% Imperial Stout, 10 different malts, Muscovado sugar and vanilla beans from Coolhead Brew, currently in Tuusula, but soon to be in Viki in the Helsinki area in Finland. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Coolhead Brew. We will definitely return to these guys at some point very soon. Thank you again to Riku for making this review possible, and do let me know some other Finnish breweries that you guys would like to see me review that I might not have heard of. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Coolhead Brew, and I'll see you guys very soon. The Black Velvet 10% Imperial Stout from Coolhead Brew, Helsinki in Finland. Slange, skål, cheers, kippis, and kiitos.